I ruined my marriage by sleeping with my boss. But I did it for us, not for myself. Before we go on, make sure to subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments which city you're watching from. This won't end like you think. What I did for love, even if the world says otherwise. My husband's a good person, the kind you don't see anymore. Sweet, responsible. He made me coffee every morning. He listened without interrupting. He cried when I gave him a cheap watch for our anniversary. He never raised his voice. He never failed me. And yet I betrayed him. I know how it sounds, but before you hate me, I want you to understand this wasn't a story of desire. It was a story of frustration, of feeling trapped in a life that wasn't mine, of seeing that I loved a man, but not the life we had together. We both worked, shared expenses, chores, dreams. We didn't have kids, but talked about having them someday when things got better. The problem was, things never got better. He earned little. He was content with just enough. While I watched life pass from our small apartment window, imagining what it'd be like to travel without counting coins, to have a decent car, to go out to dinner without checking the bank account first. And that's where he comes in, my boss, the man who represented everything my husband wasn't. Confident, successful, dominant, with suits costing more than our rent and a magnetism that silenced everyone in the office when he spoke. I admired him, I didn't love him, don't confuse me. I admired him because he embodied the life I wanted, because when he spoke to me, I felt I was worth more, that I could go far. And then came that dinner, one of those formal corporate dinners, at a restaurant I'd never have stepped foot in on my own. We sat, toasted, talked numbers, fake laughs, white-gloved waiters, the classic show. Until at one point he came over, sat next to me with his glass of red wine, and that smile I didn't know if it was a compliment or a threat. "Have you thought about your future here?" he asked, like talking about the weather. I nodded, not knowing where he was going. "I'm thinking of making changes. Promotions. And you have potential. You just need to know how to use it." He said it with a look that wasn't professional. It was something else. One I understood instantly, though I didn't want to admit it. I laughed nervously, but didn't pull away. That was my first mistake. Later, when everyone was distracted, he leaned in and said something that still echoes. "There are ways to grow in this company that aren't in the rules. You decide if you want to play." He looked at me. Waited. I didn't say anything. That was the second. When the night ended, he asked me to walk him to his car. "I want to show you something," he said. I followed him. Third mistake. There in the underground parking lot, with lights flickering over his black BMW, he told me, "I can get you promoted with everything that implies. Salary, position, visibility, but I need commitment. Exclusivity." And yes, also that, he didn't deny it. He didn't disguise it. He offered me a raw, clear, immoral, but functional deal. I thought of my husband. I thought of how he'd feel if I earned more, if he could quit his miserable job. If we finally had a decent life. And I did it. I got in the car. That night I wrote to my husband that I was staying at Sophia's, my friends, that it was late, that I was scared to go back. He replied with a heart. "Rest, my love." I was naked when I read it. That was the first time, the first of many. Asterisk edit. I didn't expect to write this, but I need to get it out. I can't keep quiet. I didn't fall in love with him. I didn't like the sex, I didn't feel powerful, I felt useful, and that was enough for me at the time. Over the next few weeks, everything became mechanical. Every Thursday and Friday I repeated the same lie. "I'm sleeping at Sophia's. We have to wake up early tomorrow." He always replied the same. "Okay, love, take care. I miss you." And I ignored him as I got into the boss's car to go to his apartment, feign desire, and receive in return something I believed was progress. There was no love in what we did, not even lust. It was a transaction, it was currency, it was the price I accepted to pay for a better life, and the reward came quickly. I started being copied on important emails. I was seated next to directors in meetings. I was offered to lead a new project. I became the boss's protege. Everyone noticed. Some smiled, others whispered. One even told me in my ear, "I wish I had your luck." It wasn't luck, it was body and guilt. At home, the contrast was brutal. My husband greeted me with prepared dinners, romantic playlists, and foot massages. I started buying him things: a new backpack, expensive headphones, an automatic coffee maker. I told him he deserved all that for being so amazing. He kissed my forehead and said, "How lucky I am." And I smiled, while inside something in me slowly broke. One day, while washing dishes, he asked if I'd like to have a child. "I think we're at a good time," he said. "I see you so happy." I froze because I didn't know if I was pregnant. And if I was, it wouldn't be his. The following week, the suspicion became certainty. 2 lines, 2 damn lines on a secretly bought test. I vomited, cried, sat in the bathroom calculating dates, checking calendars. The margin of error was almost zero. It was the boss's. I thought about aborting, I thought about confessing, I thought about running away, but I ended up choosing the most cowardly option. I kept pretending. I told my husband the big news through crocodile tears. He cried for real, lifted me in his arms. He said we were a team, that we were going to be a family, and I nodded while repeating to myself, "It's for him, it's for us, it's for something bigger than you." Months passed. Outside, everything seemed perfect. Inside me, the disaster grew faster than my belly. And yet, I kept seeing the boss. I don't know why. Maybe for fear of losing everything, maybe out of inertia, or maybe because deep down I still didn't regret it. I told myself it wasn't for the promotion anymore, it was to maintain the lie, not to destroy what I had managed to build on deception. Until one night, everything began to falter. My husband wrote to me as I was getting dressed in the boss's apartment bathroom. "Are you okay, Sophia?" "She's not answering." "Are you with her?" I panicked. I called Sophia. She told me her phone was on airplane mode, that she didn't understand why my husband was calling her. I replied to his message with a "Yes, everything's fine. We're watching movies," and he just put, "Okay, I love you." I returned home the next day. He greeted me with a forced smile. He hugged me, but didn't kiss me. I knew it. I felt it. Something in his gaze had changed. That week, everything was weird. He no longer hugged me from behind. He no longer touched my belly with emotion. He didn't ask about the baby and the silence. The silence hurt more than any scream. One night, I approached the room. He was on the edge of the bed looking at his phone. I asked what was wrong. He looked at me blankly and said with a broken voice, "Why did you do this to me?" That's all he said. He was sitting on the bed with his phone in his hand. Still, not furious, not violent, just broken, as if his body was there, but his soul had already left. I felt my world collapse. Literally, my legs wouldn't hold me. My stomach tightened. My throat closed. I tried to speak, stammered something like, "What are you talking about?" And then he put it on the bed, his phone, unlocked screen, a folder with my name, photos, videos, screenshots, everything. Messages with Sophia, the friend who was supposedly hosting me. Security videos of my entry into the boss's building, captures of us kissing inside the car, photos of me in my underwear, and the worst, audios. Audios where I told my boss things I can't even say now. "How?" I murmured, terrified. "I cloned your phone weeks ago," he replied with a calm that scared me. "I used an app. I just had to unlock it one night while you slept." I was going crazy. I wanted answers, and now I have them. I burst into tears on my knees, literally. I crawled to him. I grabbed his leg, begged him. "It's not what you think. I did it for us." He didn't even move. For us. Yes, for our life. To improve, to have a better future. Do you think it was easy? I suffered every night. I felt dirty. But I did it because you also benefited. Didn't you like the gifts? The trip? The new coffee maker? I did all that for you and the baby. Silence. Is it mine? I didn't answer. I couldn't. I didn't want to lie again. But telling the truth was stabbing him with a dagger. "I don't know," I said, barely audible. He stood up, walked away, circled the room as if he couldn't breathe. "You know what's the worst part?" he said without looking at me. "That you don't even seem to regret it. You're just trying to convince me this was a noble sacrifice." It was. I love you. I never stopped loving you. All this was for us. Then he turned and there I saw it. The hate, not resentment. Not sadness, real hate. You're trash, a manipulator, a coward. Please don't say that. And what do you want me to say? Thanks for sleeping with your boss for a promotion we didn't even need. It wasn't just for me. I just wanted you to have a better life, one you couldn't give me. And that was it. That was the phrase that killed him, that killed what little was left. So, this was all my fault? No, I didn't mean that, but it was too late. He grabbed a suitcase he already had ready. He didn't improvise, didn't hesitate, just carried it. He looked at me one last time and said, "I'm not leaving you for what you did. I'm leaving you for what you are." And he left. He closed the door silently, which hurt more. I collapsed on the floor, hugging my stomach. The baby, the one I already knew wasn't his. I wrote to him. Called. Cried. 40 messages. No response. 3 days later, I received the divorce papers. Edit. They told me I'm a terrible person. Maybe they're right, but this doesn't end here. I thought I'd hit rock bottom. I thought the divorce would be the worst. I had no idea what was coming next. After he left, I became addicted to the sound of notifications. Every time the phone vibrated, I ran hoping it was him, that he'd say something, that he'd ask how I was, that he'd tell me there was still hope, but it was never him. Just banks, spam, and a friend who told me she couldn't keep talking to me until things calmed down. Spoiler, they didn't calm down. For days I lived like a ghost. I didn't eat, didn't sleep. I hugged the empty side of the bed, talked to myself. At some point I thought maybe if I showed him I could be responsible, he'd listen, so I asked for a meeting with his lawyer. I didn't want to fight, I just wanted to negotiate, give in, try to rebuild something, even for the baby. I wanted to offer him everything he asked for, the house, the car, whatever. I only asked for one thing, child support for our son. My hands trembled when I finished speaking. The lawyer looked at me in silence. He opened his briefcase, took out an envelope. My client wants you to read this before we talk about your son. I opened it and what I found was a copy of a medical diagnosis. Permanent sterility since age 18. Bilateral obstruction of the deferent ducts. 0 probability of natural conception. I felt my soul torn out. The lawyer didn't say anything else, he didn't have to. I understood everything. He knew it from the beginning. He never believed the child was his. He just let me fall into my own lie and let me rot in it. If you insist on claiming child support, the lawyer said as he closed his portfolio, my client will proceed with a defamation and fraud lawsuit. I couldn't speak, I just nodded. I stood up, left, vomited at the building entrance. He knew, he always knew, and yet he let me invent this whole show. He let me beg, cry, ask, knowing I had nothing to negotiate with. And then the freefall began. The photos, the videos, all the content I thought only he had seen. It started circulating. Social media, forums, work groups. At first it was just whispers, then messages, then threats. I don't know if it was him. I have no proof. But who else had access to everything? And as if that wasn't enough, a week later HR called me, urgent meeting. My boss, ex-boss to be exact, was also present with his poker face. With his cup of silence, they sat me down. They told me they'd received complaints about inappropriate conduct with a direct superior, violation of internal regulations, undeclared relationships, possible use of influence for promotion. They fired me without severance, without even looking me in the eyes. And him? I asked, does he pay anything? He already resigned this morning and left the country. HR added, as if talking about the weather. I walked home. I had no money for Uber, no pride for the bus. And when I arrived, new messages awaited me. Not from him, from my parents. Is everything they're saying true? Your dad doesn't want to talk to you. You're dragging us down with you. I just wanted to sleep, but that night I dreamed of him, of my husband, of his gaze when he told me, I'm not leaving you for what you did. I'm leaving you for what you are. After losing everything, I only had one thing left, the baby. And for weeks I clung to that idea as if it were a raft in the middle of a shipwreck. I thought, I'm not alone. Not entirely. And that kept me breathing. Until one day I looked in the mirror and asked myself with brutal honesty, what kind of life can I offer him without a partner? Without a job, without family, with a shattered reputation, leaked images online, friends who no longer call me, and parents who stopped talking to me. That child. That baby I didn't ask for, didn't plan for, who came in the midst of deception, was going to carry everything from day one. He was going to be the child of betrayal, the living reminder of everything I ruined. And for the first time I didn't think of myself, I thought of him. Oh, her. Of that creature who was blameless, but would have consequences. The day I made the decision there was no crying or sad music, just silence. A dry, logical, almost surgical silence. I made the appointment by phone. I didn't tell anyone. There was no one to tell. I put on the most neutral clothes I could find. I went alone without looking at anyone in the waiting room. When I signed the documents, a part of me trembled. The other had been dead for weeks. The procedure was fast, cold. The nurse looked at me as if I were just another one. Maybe I was. Afterwards, I sat in the clinic bathroom in that light blue gown and pale skin. And for the first time, I allowed myself to cry, but not for the baby, not for the abortion. I cried for myself, for the woman I was, for the one I no longer am, for the one who thought she had control of everything, the one who got into a lie believing she could come out unscathed. When I went out into the street, the world was still the same. Cars passing, people eating, noises, footsteps, laughter. No one knew what I had just done. No one looked at me twice, and yet I felt more exposed than ever. I went home, got in the shower, and stayed there for 2 hours. I don't know if I was trying to clean myself or dissolve. I didn't feel liberated nor guilty, just empty as the space my uterus now occupied, as empty as my bed, as empty as my notifications. Asterisk, what if your ex had stayed? Someone once asked me, and my answer was immediate. He wouldn't have stayed for love, he would have stayed out of pity. And I don't want that, but a part of me did want it, because I still believed that if he had truly loved me, we would have overcome it together. Asterisk, does that make me a victim? No. Does that make me a murderer? It doesn't make me something worse either. A woman who ran out of excuses. And that's when I understood something I didn't want to accept. He didn't love me as much as he said, because if he had, he would have forgiven me, he would have looked for me, he would have rescued me from myself, but he didn't. And maybe the real mistake wasn't sleeping with my boss. Maybe it was believing that someone else could save me from the disaster I was. The worst part of a fall isn't the blow, it's the echo, that eternal silence after the impact, that moment when you look around for hands to lift you up and only see back after back turning away. When my boss disappeared, resigned, left the country, vanished like a cowardly ghost. I thought that at least the storm would subside, that without him, without the baby, without anything, the scandal would die down. But no, that was the point where everything became public. Someone, I don't know who, although I have my suspicions, started leaking my intimate photos. Screenshots of our conversations. Private videos I swore would never leave that phone. First they appeared in a work group, then on anonymous accounts, then on pages I didn't even know existed, and like in a bad movie my name started circulating. Not as a professional, not as a person, as a cautionary tale, as the woman who slept with her boss and ended up alone, without a child, without a job, and exposed on the internet. Some wrote to me directly. Was the promotion worth it? You're the reason no one takes women seriously. Poor your ex. He got rid of a monster. My social media became a dumping ground. Old photos full of insults. Hurtful comments, even on family posts. I tried to delete everything, but it was too late. Once you go viral, there's no undo button. I thought about leaving. Changing cities, names, faces, if I could, but before that I made another mistake. I called my mother. It was the only call I hadn't made. I held on to the hope that despite everything, she, the woman who taught me to fight, not to give up, not to trust appearances, would be on my side. She answered on the second ring. Hello, daughter. Her voice didn't sound annoyed, it sounded neutral. And that was worse. Have you seen what they're saying? I asked in a thin voice. Silence. Yes, I've seen everything. Mom, I don't explain. Just answer me something. Is it true? I didn't know what to say. The words got stuck. Not because I didn't have a way to justify myself, but because I knew no excuse would sound good in her mouth. It was more complicated than it seems. I finally said, "No, daughter, it wasn't." "Mom, please, what do you want me to say? That I support you? That everything will be okay? That I'm proud?" I stayed silent. And she, her voice breaking, finished, "We raised you better than this, Dad. He says he doesn't want to talk to you. He says he no longer has a daughter." And that's when I cried, but this time not out of guilt, but out of injustice, because is all this really just my fault? Where are the questions about the boss? About how he took advantage of his power? About how he offered me a deal disguised as an opportunity? No one talks about him. No one asks him anything. He left clean, no leaked videos, no social media flooded with hate, no people wishing him death. But me, they wanted to burn me at the stake, and my friends, the few who were left, disappeared. One blocked me, another unfollowed me everywhere. Even Sophia, the one who unintentionally gave me away, wrote me only one line. "You got yourself into this. Don't use me as a shield." And that's when I understood. I was completely alone. But the most ironic thing is that in my loneliness, I still repeated to myself that if he had truly loved me, he would have defended me, he would have protected me, he would have put himself out there for me, like I did for us. Yes, I betrayed him, but he executed me. I lost everything. He, on the other hand, came out unscathed, and when I confronted him, I realized he never cared about me. I don't know how much time passed from when I was fired until I gathered the courage to look for him. Days, weeks, it doesn't matter. All I know is that during all that time, while my world burned, he was gone. 0 calls, 0 messages, nothing, as if he had never existed. But one day I knew where he was. An ex-colleague told me they'd seen him in a new building, in an expensive area with another company in his name, more successful than ever, as if I hadn't cost him absolutely nothing. So I went. Yes, I went because someone had to tell him what he did. Not for justice, for dignity, for me. When he opened the door, he looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine. Impeccable white shirt. Small glass of wine in hand. Look of absolute disinterest. "Well, long time no see." That was the first thing he said. Not a drop of guilt. "I'm pregnant." I blurted out unfiltered. Even if it wasn't true, I wanted to see his reaction. He laughed, literally laughed. "You really come with that cliché? It was yours." I lost it. "Oh, I'm sorry," he said without stopping drinking. "But it's not my problem, right?" I looked at him as if I couldn't recognize him, and honestly, I don't think I ever truly knew him. "You slept with me, you used me, you promised me things." I promised. I didn't offer, and you accepted. You were the one who got in my car, you were the one who lied. You were the one who ruined your life. I was just an option you took. You're a bastard. I spat, trembling. "I'm going to sue you." He shrugged. "Do it. You have every right. But I don't work for that company anymore. I have no bosses, no codes of conduct, no image to protect. And you, well, you've already done enough damage for both of us, don't you think?" I was speechless. My hands trembled. My stomach hurt. I felt like I was going to scream, to hit something, to smash the glass in his face, but I did nothing because I understood something brutally clear. He never lost, never felt exposed, never was pointed at, never was called a slut or a disgrace, never was abandoned by his family, never was asked for repentance. Only me they destroyed for a story we both wrote. And there, standing in his impeccable apartment, while he offered me money to disappear, I knew I wasn't going to win. Not the way I wanted, not the way I needed. "I don't want your money," I told him. "I just wanted you to at least feel something." He looked at me, raised an eyebrow, and with that snake smile said, "I feel like you wasted your move. You could have done much better if you'd been smarter." I left without saying anything else. That night, for the first time, I stopped hating him because I understood him. He wasn't a monster. He was just a man with power, without guilt, without consequences. The real problem was that I thought he was more than that there was something special between us, that I had control, and I was wrong. I overestimated myself. Who decides what we are? A mistake, a video, a betrayal. What if I'm not bad? I'm just human. I've told everything. Unvarnished, unfiltered, without excuses you haven't heard. I slept with my boss, I lied to my husband, I carried a child that wasn't his, I pretended, I manipulated, I justified. I lost that child, I lost my marriage, I lost my parents. I was fired, I was exposed, I was humiliated. And you know what hurts me the most? That after all that I still believe I don't deserve so much hate. I'm not saying I'm innocent, I'm not saying I'm a victim, but I'm not the devil many want to see either. I was just a scared, tired, frustrated woman who chose wrong, very wrong, but not out of excessive ambition, but out of mistakenly believing I could build something better for both of us, for ourselves. Maybe that's the most ironic part of all. I thought I was doing it for love. Yes, for that love that shared rent with me, that shared small dreams, for that man who was content with little and whom I wanted to compensate with a lot, with what I didn't have, with what I couldn't offer him through honest means. And yes, maybe I was cowardly and dishonest and selfish, but I was also real. I was human. Does that count for nothing? Today, I live alone in an apartment that smells of damp with a job that barely pays the rent. No social media, no family, no friends, no future, but with everything I did tattooed on my skin, with every mistake repeating in my head, with every hate message archived in my memory, and I accept it because I deserve it. What I don't accept is that no one sees that in the midst of all that darkness there was a twisted attempt, yes, but an honest one, an attempt to do something good, to achieve something better, to get out of stagnation. I was wrong. Of course, I'd do it differently if I could go back, I don't know, because at that moment, with that mentality, with those circumstances, I felt I had no other option. And maybe that's what scares me the most, that even today, after everything, a part of me still believes that if he had loved me as he said, he would have forgiven me, he would have taken my hand and we would have started over, but he didn't and never will. So this is my end, or the closest thing I'll have to one. I'm not looking for you to forgive me or understand me. I just wanted to tell it, to put it out there, to record that yes, I ruined my life, but I didn't do it out of malice, I did it out of hope. And that, even if it doesn't save me, makes me something more than a mistake, it makes me human.